This is James P. White from 95.7 Cruise FM, The Locker Room. Welcome to the Jedi Jimmy podcast. This is episode number 10, One Way Out. What an amazing episode. This is the best episode of the series so far. There's only 2 episodes left, and so amazing. As I said, it's One Way Out. This episode left off exactly right after the last episode. After Olaf died, then they started planning for the escape of the prison. At the very beginning of the episode, it got real. They don't know what they're making for the Empire, but they know that the Empire really needs it because of how hard they're pushing for the numbers. Now, one thing Andor said right at the very beginning was, I'd rather die taking them out than die giving them what they want. What an amazing quote. That's not only used by him at the beginning, but actually it is used by Kino Loy, played by Andy Serkis. It's going to be used later on in a huge speech that he makes. This episode has tons of huge speeches. Okay. Next, Kino, he does give a lot of speeches, one of which is in the cell going, there's no way out. Like, it's either we escape or we need to pretend, like, in order for us to escape, we have to believe we are already dead. And so cool. Now, we go back to the ISB where they had set the trap for Anton Krieger, and so they're talking about that at the ISB head office. Now we go back to Ferrix, where Marva, who's Andor's mother, she is getting even more sick. They even send a doctor to go see her. I think she's going to die soon. That's just my my thought. Okay, now go back to Coruscant, and we're introduced to Davo Skulden. He's a bit of like a gangster, I guess, on Chandrila, where Mon Mothma's from, and she's going to him because she needs help getting some money together so that she could hide her use of her money from the Empire. And he said in order for him to help her out is if he wants permission for her daughter and his son to meet and possibly be betrothed, so get married. She said no, but I think this is the start of where her really leaving Coruscant is going to happen. Now, we go back to the prison. Andor breaks the water pipe in the bathroom in order to cover the entire floor of the work area with water. The reason why he's covering it with water is that if they do electrify the floor, it'll fry the system. At least that's what their theory is. Then we jump right to the escape. So cool, so high action, it was insane. So, as it was said, they attack the guards at the elevator. They shock the floor. It shuts down the entire power system in that area. And it does kill a couple of the prisoners. But, so cool. Now we jump to where Kino Loy is actually encouraged by Andor to give the speech to the entire floor, to the entire prison, on what they need to escape. It was such a great speech, and again, he did use the line that I'd much rather die than give them what they want. So the whole escape begins. The whole prison is trying to escape. But remember, the prison is in the middle of like a ocean or a sea or something. You can still see the the coast, like the land from there, but it's covered in water. And I don't think Kino actually escapes. He might, get pushed into the water and die, but he can't swim, so his escape fails. So I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. Now, one of the members of the ISB is actually a spy for Luthen. His name's Lonnie. He is part of the ISB, and so they're feeding information. And then, there's a huge conversation between him and Luthen. And Luthen decides that even though they have information that about everything, he doesn't want Lonnie to break his cover. He still wants him to stay undercover with the ISB. Now, at this point, Luthen does give a huge speech. Remember, I said this is an episode of speeches. Luthen was asked what he has sacrificed for the rebellion, and this is deep. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy in order to defeat them. I burn my decency for somebody else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I will never see. Pretty deep. So now we go back to Andor. He's escaped. He's on the mainland, and he's still running. So cool, so action-packed this episode. Again, one of my favorites of this series so far. Now, one thing I've always said about this podcast is I will always tell you things that I've missed in previous episodes. Now, remember, ISB agent Deidre Miro was getting the final details, and it was mentioned that the rebel pilot was headed to Kafrene. Now, Kafrene is a mining colony that was actually introduced in Rogue One, which takes place about 4 years from now. And it is technically the very first appearance in Rogue One of Cassian Andor. That's where he meets up with his informant. And in order for them to escape the troopers, Cassian ends up killing him to make it easier for him to escape. Now, in A New Hope, Obi-Wan talks about how the Jedis were guardians of the galaxy of peace and justice in the galaxy before the dark times, before the Empire. Now, this Cassian Andor series actually really shows the dark times of the Empire and how ruthless and evil they are. So there's a bit of a link from this to A New Hope, which does take place in about 4 years. Now, my favorite quotes of the episodes. So, episode 10, I'd rather die taking them down than die giving them what they want. Again, that was a quote used by Andor and later used by Kino Loy in a speech. Episode 9, it was another quote from Cassian. The less they think we know, the better. Episode 8, a quote from Luthen. Oppression breeds rebellion. Episode 7, Mon Mothma. I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat. Episode 6, Vel. One path, one choice. We win or everybody dies. Episode 5, Skeen. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. Previous predictions in the Jedi Jimmy podcast, episode 29, The History of Andor. I did predict that Saw Gerrera was going to make an appearance, and he did show up in one of the earlier episodes. I think it was episode 5. I said in the first 3 episodes that Mon Mothma was going to end up being one of the leaders of the Rebel Alliance, and I was correct. In episode 4, I did predict that either Lando Calrissian or a younger version of Han Solo and Chewbacca might actually show up. It hasn't happened yet, but I think either in the next 2 episodes it will, or in the next season. Agent Callus, who is a member of the ISB, I still believe that he's going to show up. That was my prediction in episode 4. Episode 5, the next episode I said was going to be the attack on the base, and it did happen. And I also said that there's going to be a Jedi that does show up, and it could happen in the last couple episodes. It could be Starkiller or Galen Merrick from one of the video games. In episode 6, I did say that Andor was going to go back to the group, but that isn't definitely going to happen because Vel is trying to kill him. Now, by the end of this series, I believe this season, Mon Mothma will officially announce the formation of the Rebel Alliance. And I also said that Andor was going to reprogram one of the security droids, which will be K2S. So, we still have 2 episodes, and now he's on the land again. He might still be able to capture one. In episode 8, it didn't happen, but I predicted that there was going to be the Borgullet was going to be back. So the thing that Saw Gerrera used to interrogate his prisoners, that didn't happen. In episode 9, I said that that Cassian was going to plan his escape, but he just full out did it. So I was a little bit off there. And the entire prison escape, where I thought it was just going to be a couple episodes or a couple people. Now, in episode 10, one thing that we will see is the return to Yavin 4. If you remember the Yavin 4, that was the rebel base in which they attacked the Death Star from in A New Hope. And it is one of the major bases of the Rebel Alliance. So that is either going to happen this season or season 2. And my predictions going forward for going forward will be that the Andor will go back to Ferrix and find that Marva is dead. I still believe that's going to happen. And Vel will try to kill him, and he will survive, possibly even kill her. Now, I do need to thank you for joining me on this podcast. I know I normally do this podcast on Thursday, but I proved that there is actually a chance that you can be too drunk to podcast, and that was it. I just started day drinking on Thursday and didn't recover. So I need to thank my sponsors. First of all, the Dean Blundell Network on deanblundell.com. And as well, I do need to thank my buddy Army Chris for Fire for Effect Productions. Actually, with his help on most normal days, I can still drink and do the podcast. But with him gone, this last couple weeks, I was too drunk to podcast. I do need to thank you for joining me this week, and I look forward to the next 2 episodes, which are going to be the last of the Cassian Andor series. So good. May the Force be with you, always.